Isiah Thomas was one of the greatest point guards to ever step on the court, a leader, a champion, and an icon of the game. He built the Bad Boys Detroit Pistons into an unstoppable force, winning back-to-back NBA championships and solidifying his place in history. His fearless leadership, unmatched skills, and relentless drive made him one of the most respected players of his era. But after the cheers faded and the lights dimmed, life outside the court took an unexpected turn. A career-ending injury forced him into early retirement, and his transition to coaching and front office roles was plagued by controversy, legal battles, and public scrutiny. Financial missteps, failed ventures, and strained relationships left him struggling to reclaim his former glory. Once celebrated as a legend, Thomas now finds himself on the outside looking in, battling the harsh realities of post-NBA life. This is the tragic reality of Isiah Thomas at 63 years old. Isiah Thomas was more than just a talented player. He was a leader, a warrior, and the heart of the Detroit Pistons. From the streets of Chicago to the bright lights of the NBA, his journey was defined by resilience, determination, and an unbreakable will to win. Born on April 30th, 1961, in one of the toughest neighborhoods in Chicago, Thomas grew up in a household of 9 children, where poverty and hardship were daily reality. But even in the midst of adversity, he found solace in basketball, using the game as an escape from the dangers that surrounded him. From an early age, his talent was undeniable. His speed, vision, and ability to control the game set him apart from his peers. Basketball wasn't just a game for Thomas, it was his ticket to a better life. Determined to rise above his circumstances, he worked tirelessly to refine his skills, earning recognition as one of the top high school players in the nation. His dominance on the court earned him a scholarship to Indiana University, where he played under the legendary coach Bob Knight. Though just a freshman, Thomas quickly became the leader of the team, displaying a level of maturity and composure far beyond his years. In 1981, he led Indiana to an NCAA championship, cementing his status as one of the most promising young talents in the game. That same year, he declared for the NBA draft, where he was selected second overall by the Detroit Pistons. From the moment he stepped onto the court, it was clear that Isiah Thomas was destined for greatness. Despite being undersized for an NBA point guard, his quickness, basketball IQ, and competitive fire made him nearly unstoppable. As the new face of the franchise, he was tasked with leading the Pistons out of mediocrity and into championship contention. It was no easy task, but Thomas embraced the challenge with the same relentless attitude that had defined his life. He quickly became the engine of the team, orchestrating the offense, pushing the tempo, and delivering clutch performances when it mattered most. But Thomas wasn't just a star, he was a fighter. The Pistons, under his leadership, developed a reputation for their aggressive, hard-nosed style of play. Dubbed the Bad Boys, they embraced physicality and intimidation, frustrating opponents with their relentless defense and toughness. Thomas embodied this mentality, playing through injuries, taking on the league's biggest stars, and never backing down from a challenge. Year after year, he led the Pistons deeper into the playoffs, but the road to a championship was filled with heartbreak. For 3 straight seasons, Detroit fell short, suffering painful losses to powerhouse teams like the Boston Celtics and Los Angeles Lakers. Each defeat only fueled Thomas's hunger for greatness. He knew that if he wanted to reach the top, he and his team would have to fight harder than ever before. In 1988, the Pistons made their first NBA Finals appearance, but lost in a brutal 7-game series to the Lakers. It was a crushing blow. Thomas refused to let failure define him. In 1989, everything finally came together. The Pistons stormed through the playoffs, dismantling their opponents with ruthless efficiency. In the finals, they exacted revenge on the Lakers, sweeping them in 4 games to capture their first NBA championship. Thomas had reached the mountaintop, but he wasn't satisfied. The following season, he led the Pistons to another title, defeating the Portland Trail Blazers to secure back-to-back championships. In 1990, he was named NBA Finals MVP, solidifying his legacy as one of the greatest point guards in history. For a decade, Thomas was the heartbeat of the Pistons, the driving force behind one of the most dominant teams of the era. His ability to take over games, his leadership on and off the court, and his unwavering will to win made him one of the most respected players in the league. But even for legends, the game doesn't last forever. And for Isiah Thomas, life after basketball would prove far more challenging than anything he faced on the court. Isiah Thomas was once a hero in the NBA, a player whose name was synonymous with leadership, skill, and determination. But as the game he loved moved on without him, his attempts to remain a part of basketball's elite would only serve to tarnish his legacy. In 1994, at just 32 years old, Thomas suffered a devastating Achilles tendon injury. Unlike some of his peers who enjoyed long, celebrated careers with farewell tours and grand exits, Thomas's retirement was abrupt, unceremonious, and unexpected. One day, he was the heart of the Detroit Pistons, and the next, he was facing an uncertain future with no clear path forward. For someone whose entire identity was built around the game, stepping away from the court was a challenge he was unprepared for. The adrenaline, the competition, the drive to win, everything that fueled him was suddenly gone. But rather than fade into the background, Thomas was determined to stay in basketball in any way he could. His first major step into the business side of the sport came when he became part owner and executive vice president of the newly formed Toronto Raptors. On paper, it seemed like the perfect transition, a former NBA champion helping to build a new franchise from the ground up. But behind the scenes, conflicts with ownership and internal disagreements led to his departure after just a few years. Despite this setback, Thomas remained persistent in his pursuit of a front office role. In 2003, he took on the dual position of head coach and president of basketball operations for the New York Knicks, one of the most high-profile franchises in the league. This was his opportunity to prove he could translate his on-court brilliance into executive success. But instead of elevating the Knicks, his tenure became one of the most disastrous in NBA history. He made questionable trades, overpaid for underperforming players, and led the team into one of its darkest periods. The Knicks, once a proud organization, became a laughingstock under his leadership. As the losses mounted, so did the criticism. Fans turned on him, the media dissected every misstep, and his reputation, once built on excellence, started to crumble. But the worst was yet to come. In 2007, Thomas found himself at the center of a legal scandal when a sexual harassment lawsuit was filed against him by a Knicks executive. The case resulted in an $11.6 million settlement, further damaging his reputation and making it nearly impossible for him to secure another prominent NBA role. The controversy overshadowed his basketball accomplishments, turning him from a respected icon into a figure surrounded by scandal and poor decision-making. Financially, Thomas's struggles only deepened. Unlike many of his former peers who transitioned into lucrative business ventures, broadcasting roles, or ownership positions, Thomas's ventures outside of basketball failed to bring him long-term success. Poor investments, legal expenses, and career missteps left him far from the financial security that many expected him to have. While players like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson built empires after their playing days, Thomas found himself struggling to maintain relevance, both in the business world and within the NBA community. The more he tried to stay involved in basketball, the more his reputation seemed to suffer. He went from being a celebrated leader to a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly a legacy can be eroded by mismanagement, controversy, and failed second chances. He was once the fearless leader of the Bad Boys Pistons, a champion who stood tall in the face of adversity. But in retirement, the game that had once defined him now seemed determined to leave him behind. The very sport that had once brought him glory had now become the source of his greatest struggles. The game that made Isiah Thomas a legend also took a toll on his body and mind. While some of his peers transitioned smoothly into retirement, building successful business ventures, or remaining in the public eye as commentators and executives, Thomas found himself fighting battles that no one saw coming. The intense physical punishment he endured throughout his career didn't just fade away when he left the court. Years of relentless competition, high-impact play, and countless injuries left him dealing with chronic pain that would never fully heal. His Achilles tear, which ended his career prematurely, was just the beginning of a long struggle with mobility and discomfort. The knee problems that plagued him during his playing days only worsened with age, making even the simplest physical activities a challenge. Unlike other retired players who could still enjoy the game in some capacity, Thomas found himself physically unable to engage in the sport that had once defined his life. life. But the physical struggles were only part of the battle. The pressure of his post-playing career weighed heavily on him, leading to emotional and mental health struggles that few could see from the outside. In 2008, he was hospitalized after an overdose on sleeping pills, an incident that raised alarms about his well-being. Although he later described it as an accidental overdose, many speculated that it was a cry for help, an indication of the emotional burden he had been carrying. The weight of his failed front office stints, legal controversies, and financial struggles had become overwhelming. Those who knew him best, including former teammates and close friends, began to express concern about his state of mind. He had gone from a fierce, confident leader on the court to a man seemingly drowning in the challenges of life after basketball. Despite his setbacks, Thomas refused to give up on his connection to the game. Coaching seemed like the logical next step, a way for him to channel his basketball knowledge and experience into mentoring the next generation. He took a coaching job at Florida International University, FIU, in an attempt to rebuild his reputation and prove that he still had something valuable to offer. But even at the collegiate level, success eluded him. After just 3 seasons, he was fired, another blow to his already struggling career. He continued working in basketball media, analyzing the game he once dominated, but he never reached the level of influence or success that peers like Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan had achieved. While they became billionaires and industry leaders, Thomas was left trying to carve out a place for himself in an NBA world that seemed to have moved on without him. Hall of Fame recognition solidified his legacy as one of the greatest point guards of all time. But despite this honor, he was never fully embraced by the basketball community the way other legends were. His relationships with the league and many of its biggest names remained strained, his past controversies preventing him from receiving the same level of admiration and respect that others enjoyed. For Thomas, the game that had once been his greatest love had become a painful reminder of everything he had lost. The cheers, the championships, the brotherhood, it was all in the past. And as the years went on, he found himself more and more isolated, struggling with the reality that, despite his achievements, he would never truly get the recognition and second chance he had hoped for. Once one of the NBA's most beloved stars, Isiah Thomas now finds himself isolated, caught between the past and an uncertain future. While others are celebrated, he remains on the outside looking in. For years, he was the face of the Detroit Pistons, the fearless leader who carried his team to back-to-back championships. But despite his accomplishments, he has never received the same universal admiration as other NBA greats. His strained relationships, both personal and professional, have left him without the recognition and support that many of his peers still enjoy. Perhaps the biggest stain on his legacy is his long-standing feud with Michael Jordan. A rivalry that began on the court would go on to define Thomas's career in ways that he never expected. Throughout the late 1980s, the Pistons and Bulls engaged in some of the most physical and heated battles in NBA history. Thomas and the Bad Boys Pistons repeatedly stood in the way of Jordan's rise, delivering punishing blows and denying him championship glory year after year. But once the tables turned and the Bulls finally overcame the Pistons, the rivalry took on a personal nature, one that would ultimately cost Thomas one of the greatest honors in basketball. The infamous 1992 Dream Team snub remains one of the most talked about controversies in NBA history. The greatest collection of basketball talent ever assembled took the world by storm at the Barcelona Olympics, cementing their place as icons of the game. But one name was missing: Isiah Thomas. Despite his undeniable credentials, he was left off the roster, and many believe that Michael Jordan played a key role in keeping him out. While Jordan has never admitted outright that he blocked Thomas from the team, various reports suggest that he made it clear he wouldn't play if Thomas was included. The decision sent a message that Thomas was not part of the NBA's inner circle, that he was not welcome among the league's most revered legends. This exclusion wasn't just about missing the Olympics. It was a defining moment that marked Thomas's alienation from the broader NBA community. While Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and others became the faces of the league's golden era, Thomas was left behind. Even decades later, he remains a polarizing figure, never fully embraced by the game he gave everything to. But his strained relationships extend beyond just Jordan. Over the years, tensions have surfaced interest between Thomas and some of his former Pistons teammates, including Joe Dumars, the man who shared the backcourt with him during Detroit's championship runs. Despite their success together, their relationship has reportedly been distant, and Thomas is often absent from major Pistons celebrations. While other franchises go out of their way to honor their past legend, Thomas's presence at Pistons events has been inconsistent, raising questions about his standing within the organization. Off the court, personal struggles have only added to his isolation. Reports suggest that his past financial and legal troubles have caused rifts within his family, creating additional burdens that he has had to carry alone. Once one of the most confident and charismatic figures in basketball, Thomas now finds himself battling the weight of a legacy that is as complicated as it is brilliant. The game that once defined him now serves as a painful reminder of opportunities lost, relationships fractured, and a reputation that, despite all of his accomplishments, remains forever debated. Isiah Thomas's story is one of triumph, but also of hardship. Despite his success on the court, his post-NBA life has been filled with struggles. While other legends enjoy their retirement, Thomas continues to fight for his place in the basketball world. He was once one of the most dominant point guards in NBA history, a two-time champion who redefined what it meant to be a leader. His ability to control the game, make clutch plays, and inspire his teammates was unmatched. But unlike his peers, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Michael Jordan, his name is rarely mentioned when discussing the all-time greats. For years, his contributions to the game have been overshadowed, his legacy often overlooked in favor of those who followed a more traditional path of NBA greatness. While Jordan became a billionaire through his iconic sneaker empire and Magic built a vast business empire, Thomas's ventures failed to reach the same level of success. His career after basketball was marred by scandals, controversial decisions, and missed opportunities, all of which prevented him from capitalizing on his once untouchable brand. In an era where former NBA stars have found ways to secure generational wealth, Thomas has struggled to find financial stability. His time with the New York Knicks damaged his reputation beyond repair. The failed trades, mismanagement, and sexual harassment lawsuit didn't just affect his ability to stay in the NBA, it affected his ability to maintain the wealth he had earned during his playing career. Once a revered figure, he became a cautionary tale, an example of how quickly things can fall apart when the wrong decisions are made. While Jordan and Johnson built their legacies beyond basketball, Thomas found himself stuck in a cycle of misfortune, unable to break free from the mistakes of his past. Despite making millions in the NBA, Thomas's financial troubles became a harsh reality. Unlike some players who found new ways to generate income, he faced setbacks at nearly every turn. Failed business ventures, legal costs, and the inability to secure high-profile endorsement deals left him with far fewer resources than expected for someone of his stature. And as he watched his former rivals thrive, he struggled to maintain his footing. But his struggles weren't just financial. Even within the NBA, his place in history often feels uncertain. When discussions arise about the greatest teams, the most dominant dynasties, and the most influential players, Thomas's name is frequently left out. The Bad Boys Pistons, despite their undeniable impact on the league, do not receive the same level of reverence as the Showtime Lakers, Jordan's Bulls, or even Bird's Celtics. His individual brilliance is sometimes overshadowed by the controversy surrounding his career, making it difficult for him to receive the respect he rightfully deserves. Retirement has not been the comfortable, celebrated period that many expected for him. While other legends appear at NBA events, serve as ambassadors for the game, or enjoy lucrative careers as analysts, Thomas has struggled to maintain that same level of relevance. He has fought to stay involved, but the league that once celebrated him now often treats him as an afterthought. His story serves as a reminder of how quickly things can change, how easily a legacy can be tarnished, and how difficult life after basketball can be, even for the greats. Isiah Thomas was once the heart and soul of a championship team, a fearless competitor who took on the best and never backed down. But in retirement, the victories have been few and far between. The game he once dominated has moved on, and while his name is still etched in the record books, the recognition, respect, and financial security that should have followed him have remained just out of reach. For many former players, retirement is a time of reflection, celebration, and success. But for Thomas, Thomas, it has been a constant battle, one that even at 63 years old, he is still fighting to win.